For many people, being at home should be where you feel the safest from the outside world. I mean, we have doors with locks, sometimes multiple locks. Our windows can have locks. We have alarm systems that not only notify us if someone's trying to break in, but also makes loud noises to scare them away. The alarm can even call the police for you if you're not able to. We have a roof to protect from the weather. We have a heater or air conditioning to control the indoor temperature. We can even control the temperature of our bed. So when we're in our home, we shouldn't have to worry about bad things happening. That's what Chris thought too. But then a stranger came into his home with a gun. And toward the end of our conversation, you'll hear where that stranger had been just 10 days earlier. Real people in unreal situations.
There is a girl hanging by her broken leg from the telephone wire.
And I called 911 and I said, I found a baby.
I turned around. I see a gun pointed at me close enough I could touch it.
She would hold our heads on the water all the time.
He levels the gun, pulls the trigger, and I go down.
Her eyes were full of tears. She didn't want to leave us.
My hair catches on fire.
I swear to God, this image is burned in my head for the rest of my life.
I'm Scott Johnson, and this is What Was That Like? Where you were living at the time, would you have called it a relatively safe neighborhood?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very nice neighborhood. It's in one of the nicest parts of town here. I checked the demographics. Everyone makes way more money than I do.
Okay.
So it's a pretty wealthy neighborhood compared to, no, I'm wealthy, but everyone around me is.
And here, meaning you're in the Chicago area?
Yes, Chicago, yes.
What were your living arrangements at the time?
So I live in a basement apartment with myself and two roommates. So basically, it's just it's a garden apartment. As soon as you walk into the living room, and then it's just like a straight down, like almost like a hallway. It's just basically a hallway with three bedrooms: my bedroom, my roommate's bedroom, and then my other roommate's bedroom on the left, and then bathroom on the right, and then kitchen on the right. So it's basically just a straight hallway down.
And who were your roommates?
There's Jack, who lives in the middle bedroom, and there's Ben, who lives in the last bedroom.
What's your age range? I mean, you're all kind of the same age, right?
Yeah, I think the youngest Jack, he might be like 26. Ben's 33. I'm 31. So we're all late 20s, early 30s. We all like arts, like improv, acting, things like that.
And what did you do for work at the time?
I was a waiter downtown.
Okay, so that kind of sets the scene. Let's talk about the day when this happened. Can you just take us through? You were hanging out at some friend's house with some others watching TV, and kind of what happened there.
It's Monday because I'm a waiter. I have weird hours, so I'm off all day on a Monday. My friends are also, they're actors, so they have weird hours too. So I'm over there Monday during the day. Just decide to watch some TV at their house. So I'm hanging out there for a few hours on a Monday. 5:30, 6 p.m. So I'm like, okay, I guess it's time to go. So I get an Uber from their place and get right back to my place. It's raining. I remember it was raining when I got out, and then as I was walking up to my apartment, there was a woman who I'd never seen before, maybe like early to mid 50s, just standing out in the rain, just standing right in front of my apartment on the sidewalk. I go up to her. I'm like, hey, like, can I help you? She says, I'm just waiting for my sister. I go, oh, okay. Like, what do you mean? Like, she's like, yeah, I'm waiting for like a ride. I'm waiting for my sister to come pick me up. And I'm like, okay. And then she's like, can you call her? And I go, oh God. Oh, okay, fine.
You didn't really want to get involved here, right?
No, I didn't want anything involved. I didn't want to have to do anything, but I've had to do this before, where people are lost and like that, and I'll help them out. So I'm like, well, she's sitting right in front of my house. It'd be so awkward to say no and then walk right into my house. I take my phone. She's like, I don't have a phone on me. So I take my phone and I call this number. She gives me one number, or she starts to give me one number, and then she's like, oh wait, actually she has a new number. So then, okay. So I call whatever number it is. Somebody picks up, but nobody answers. So I'm like, well, nobody answered. She's like, oh yeah, nobody answered. I knew that. I was like, okay, that's weird. But I'm like, you know what? It's raining. I don't want to deal with this anymore. It sounds like she's got somebody coming. I'm going to go inside. So I take a left and I walk away from her and I walk inside my house.
Did that interaction seem suspicious to you at the time, or just awkward or confusing?
It was mostly awkward and confusing. It was a little bit suspicious just because I just had never seen her before. I don't know why she would have been standing right in front of our apartment, because she didn't live in any of the, like, it's like my apartment and there's two apartments on top of us, and there's no way that I'd never seen her, because it's all like young people. It's all like young people. So like this like older person, definitely not from around there.
So she was just still standing there, just kind of looking around at the street.
Yeah. So I go inside, and then, so my bedroom's the first bedroom when you walk inside. The first thing I notice is that my door is completely open. And I'm like, well, that's not how I left it. I don't know why my roommates would have my door open. I was like getting ready to be like, hey, you guys, like, this is a big invasion of my privacy. Little did I know there'd be a bigger one, much bigger one. So I had some things I sat them down in my room, and then I shut the door, and I'm like, all the thoughts running through my mind are like, my roommates are like going through my room for some reason. That's when, as I turn around, I see a man in a COVID mask with a revolver pointed at me. So then time just stops right there. So I freeze up. I'm like, I realize that life is just complete. Like right now I'm in the hands of this guy. I didn't freak out. I was just like, okay, well, I got to get through this now. Just do whatever you can to get through this.
So he's standing there, and you got a man standing in front of you pointing a gun at you. Mm-hmm. Had you ever thought about in advance how you thought you would react in a situation like this? And was it as calm as you're describing it to be?
You always got the like, oh, we like what if somebody like on the train starts like acting up? Like, what are you going to do? Like, I think probably especially men have all these like power fantasies, maybe. Mm-hmm. But like,
I'm going to be the hero.
Yeah, I'm going to John Wick everything. But it's very, very different when it's in your face and there's a gun, and it's even more different when there's really nothing you can do because you got caught. Essentially, like who thinks when they walk in their home it's going to be a guy pointing a gun at you? So it's just a very different feeling when you're already in the worst possible place, I think. I was very surprised, though, how calm I was. Pretty much just like calm and like, okay. I was like mostly because like my bedroom was a little messy. I was like, oh man, like that's embarrassing. I was like, this guy saw how messy my bedroom was. That's really mostly the thought I was running through my head.
That is so interesting. I mean, he's got a gun and you're worried about a little bit of clutter that he's going to see. But you're right. You never know what thoughts are going to go through your head.
That's mostly what I was like, oh, and if I die, everyone's going to see, oh, this guy's a messy guy. So I was like, okay, I have to live so people don't see how messy my bedroom was. So I don't know why that was all running through my head, but so then he's like, shut up, don't move. So I just put my hands right up. I put my hands up and let him know, hey, I don't got anything. I'm not hiding anything. So he just like slowly, he just walks up and he takes that revolver. He puts it right on my head. And then he shifts it around to the back of my head. And he says, like, move, like, go into like that room there. And that's when I see the middle bedroom, Jack's bedroom. The lights on, the doors open. He walks me in, and I'm like, oh my God. If I see that my roommate's dead, that's it. I'm going to have to really start trying to figure something out. I just pray that he's still alive in there. And we walk in, and that's when I see Jack. He's completely hog-tied, like tied up. His wrists are just really tied shut with a bunch of different cables. And he's on the ground. His legs are tied up.
When you say hog-tied, that means he was laying on his stomach?
Laying on his stomach, yes.
And his hands were behind his back and tied to his feet at the same time.
Okay. Yeah. So he is completely immobilized, lying down, facing the bedroom door. So a little bit of a relief that he's alive. I'm like, okay. So I know this guy is not some kind of serial killer. At least I'm thinking he's not. Anyway, that was my biggest worry, is that this guy was like, had already decided, hey, we're dead. He puts the gun to my head and says, get down on the ground. So I do. I get down on my knees, and then I get down with my belly to the ground. So like Jack's head is facing towards the bedroom door. I'm facing towards the opposite wall, the window.
Oh, so you weren't looking at each other then?
No. We weren't looking at each other. And
could you see the gunman, or did you get a look at his face? I know you said he was wearing a mask.
I got to see a little bit because he had like these short dreads, and so I saw like everything above his nose and his eyes and his hair and everything like that. Then I got on the ground. So he just asked, like, give me your money, give me your wallet, like reach into your wallet. So I take my hand and I reach into my pocket while I'm still on the ground, and I take out the wallet. And since I'm a waiter, I had some cash on me. I had about $200 in cash. So I'm like, take whatever you want, man. He takes the cash, and then he asks me for my bank cards. So I'm like, yeah, here, like, take the whole wallet. Starts asking me for like PIN codes. So I give him PIN codes. He asks me a couple times for PIN codes. I'm like, yeah, just take whatever you want, man. Like,
did he ask the pins multiple times because he was trying to remember them, or do you think he might have thought you were giving him wrong codes?
I think he was trying to remember it, because I think the second time he actually got out his phone and like wrote it down on his phone. I think me coming in just completely threw off his whole plan, because he was not expecting me to come in at all.
But he already had Jack tied up, so I wonder why he was still there. Or I wonder, maybe he was preparing to leave when you got home or something.
I think he must have been just about to leave. I think I had the worst timing, because he was probably about to leave, because I think he had just finished tying him up, because he spent a long time tying up. He tied him up with every kind of cable that he could find around his bedroom, Jack's bedroom. So he really had him down. I think he was there for about 30 minutes before I showed up. And I think he wanted cash. I think he just kept looking for, I think he just really wanted to make cash appear. And I guess it did. I guess it did when I walked in.
It sounds like you're doing pretty much the right thing so far. You're being very cooperative, just in the hope that he'll leave. Did you feel optimistic at this point that it was going to be okay?
No, I was still very worried. It was not to the point where he takes my wallet, he takes my cash, and then he's like, okay. Like, and then I just start hearing like ripping and tearing. And then I sort of turned my head and I looked, and I saw that he was tearing pieces of bed sheet off. And then he takes like the little sheets of the bed sheets, and he walks over to me. He says, put your hands behind your back. And then he kind of moves my hands around to where like they're like as close together as possible. And he starts taking the bits of bed sheet. He starts tying my hands. He ties them a few times, and he starts doing like going to my feet. He's ripping off bed sheet. I'm just hearing this awful tearing sound next to me. And so he ties my feet, and then he finishes the hog tie. He ties my hands and then my feet together. And it was at that point that my roommate asked, so what are you going to do to us? And he says, I'm not going to kill y'all. I just want the money. That was when I finally felt relief. I was like, okay, so this guy just wants the money. He's not, this isn't some weird, maybe, I mean, he could be lying still, but I sort of trusted him. I was like, I don't think this is some kind of thrill kill or some kind of crazy serial killer. I think he really just wanted the money. I think once I flashed all that cash to him, I think that was like, oh, okay, that fits. Like something was finally working in his brain. He was like, okay, I can finally get out of here. I've got exactly what I need. So that was really the first time I felt any relief. And that's even, I cracked a joke. He said, I just want the money. I go, hey, that's fair. And I let out a little chuckle, and no one else laughed but me.
Tough room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, toughest room I've ever been in.
I'm picturing him tearing these bed sheets. Was he holding the gun the whole time?
I'm just not sure. Just because I wasn't really trying to look too much. I would take little glances, and then I would move my head back because I didn't want him to just look at me. If I was staring at him the whole time while he was doing the crime, I didn't want him to hit me or something more. So I'm just not sure. I think he was doing it with the gun in his hand, from what I can remember.
Did you ever consider making a move? How do you compare in size to this guy?
I'm probably much bigger. He was might have been 5'10", average build. I'm much bigger. I'm 6'2". I'm 330, 340. So I probably could have, if there was no gun, I think I would have been able to take him pretty easily. I wasn't going to risk anything bad happening. And really the whole time, he was tying me up, I realized it was a little bit loose just because I think he didn't have as much time to tie me up. And it was with the bed sheet, this kind of flimsy bed sheet. So the whole time he's tying me up, I'm okay, as long as if anything does happen, I think I can really just slip out of this pretty easily. So I'm praying to God while he's tying me up. I'm don't tie me up any more than this. So eventually he does leave. We hear the front door open and close. And then that's when Jack's well, I don't know how we're going to get out of this. But I just, I think I shocked him because I just completely slipped out immediately and hopped up on my feet, and he didn't take my phone, luckily. So I just had my phone, and I immediately called 911, and I started readying in a description of him, of the guy who was just in our house.
Hello, this is Chicago Emergency.
Hi, hello?
Hi, does anyone need fire, police, or ambulance?
Yes, please, immediately.
Police or ambulance?
Okay, go.
Hello, do you need police or ambulance? Okay, what's going on?
We were just robbed by a man with a gun.
Okay. What's your name, sir? Is the male, was he white, black, Hispanic?
He's black.
Okay. What was he wearing?
What was he wearing?
It was all black.
It was all black.
He had dreads on.
He had a revolver and he had dreads.
Okay, which direction did he go?
I don't know. He tied us up.
Was he on foot or in a vehicle?
What's that?
Was he on foot or in a vehicle?
He had a COVID-19 mask on. I don't know. We didn't see when he left.
Uh-huh, in an apartment.
We're in an apartment. We just left. We're at the basement.
Okay, we're looking for police, sir.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
But then you hung up and called back. What happened after that first call? That there was a little confusion there, right?
We were saying earlier, you never really know what you're going to be thinking of in times like this. I had remembered that I just gave that lady outside earlier my phone number. Essentially, I called some number. So when I called 911, I talked to an operator, and then they said something. I don't remember exactly what they said, but it was 1 second. And then the 911 phone call ended, and then this unknown number called me back. I think it was the same 911 operator, but I was talking, I was okay, no, I don't. For some reason, I was this seems shady. I don't know why. I've never heard of them calling back on an unknown number during an emergency call. I was well, she has my phone number. Did I just activate some kind of weird, crazy thing where I called them and I was telling them all the information, lots of conspiracy stuff entered my head just because I was in such a paranoid, panic state that I thought 911 was trying to trick me. So, okay, I hung up and I was okay, that wasn't right. And so I called them again, and I just basically gave them the exact same description again. And I talked with them. I told them, a guy with a gun was just in our home, gave him the description.
Chicago Emergency Combs.
Hi, I just called earlier. My phone stopped. We were robbed. And
Okay, is anyone hurt or in need of an ambulance?
do you need an ambulance?
No, just somebody to cut me out with the.
We need somebody to cut him because he was his hands were tied.
My hands are still tied up.
Okay, so you're indoors?
Yes. Don't send an ambulance, but we do need somebody to cut him out.
Got it. EMS refused. Okay, tell me your name.
Your phone number?
That's the last four digits, right?
Yes.
Okay, how many robbers were there?
There were two.
Male or female?
There was two. There was one in here, and I think there was a lookout outside who I talked to.
Okay, one male.
One female, one male.
One male and one female came into the house?
No, one male came into the house. One female was out looking. Was on lookout.
One female. Okay, the male, black, white, or Hispanic?
Black.
Did you see the color of his clothing?
You said he was wearing all black? Yeah.
All black. He had dreads.
He had dreads and a COVID-19 mask on.
Locks and COVID-19 mask. Did you see a weapon?
Yes, he had a gun pointed at us.
Okay.
A revolver.
Okay, and did they utilize a vehicle?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay, and did you see what direction they went away in?
No, I don't know.
Direction of flight unknown. All right, watch for the police. I will let them know you're still waiting, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Call us back if you need to.
Okay, bye.
How long did it take for the cops to show up?
It might have been 2 to 3 minutes at most. It was very quick. We were very surprised at how quick it was. I remember just like immediately afterwards, I'm like, okay, Jack's still on the floor. He's still tied up. I'm able to pull apart his leg bindings, which were just with sheet, but his arms were like really tied up with like electrical cords like that. So I couldn't get it off immediately. All I could do was like pick him up and get him back on his feet, but he's still tied up with his arms. So we just get him up. I closed the bedroom door immediately after the guy left. I closed and locked it. So we were just kind of waiting until the cops arrived. And after like a minute or so, I open back up the bedroom door and I check and see if there's anybody there. So then we go into the living room, and that's when I hear people outside say, like, do you live here? Like, do you have an ID? And I realize, like, that's the cops. So I open up the door. I still have the bindings on my right arm and my right leg. So I'm like waving around. I've got bed sheet tied to my hand. I look like a lunatic. So I see a bunch of cops outside. And one of them's like talking to the lady I just talked to, who was still there for some reason. I don't know why she didn't leave too.
This is the lady that you saw on the way in.
Yes.
And that's who they were talking to. Man.
Yeah. She was still standing outside. So I'm like, hey, like, come in here. And they point to her like, is she involved? I'm like, oh, yes, absolutely. She was the lookout for sure. So they pull her aside and then they come and see us and they're like, oh my God, like, I point to Jack, I point to my friend. I'm like, hey, he's tied up. So a cop comes over to him, gets a knife out, and he starts to try to cut through it. And that's when I hear like on the radio, like, hey, we got the guy. Like, we think we found him at the train station just a few blocks away. So then the cop's like, oh my gosh, like, I gotta go here. And he gives me the knife. I'm like, oh my, okay, all right. So they go off to go chase down the bad guy. I'm just like here cutting through all this cable and rope.
But someone stayed with the woman, right, to keep her in custody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we still had like a couple of cops who stayed at our apartment, but they were all outside with her.
I'm confused as to why would she, if her accomplice left, why would she remain on the scene, I wonder. Have you thought about that?
I'm pretty sure it's like if those bank cards didn't line up right, I think he might have been just back and he needed to make, because he, as far as he knew, we just still would have been tied up.
True. Yeah.
I don't think he he thought we would get out as quickly. Like even Jack was like, really thought we were going to be tied up for hours trying to figure out how to get out. So I think he just did not think that we were going to get out in time. So I think she was still there just making sure, you know, if anyone's suspicious, maybe if another roommate came in, I think probably if another roommate came home and saw us tied up and like she knew, like call the cops and then get out of there. I don't think she was expecting cops to show up. I think he really thought we were tied up for a while. I was able to cut him loose, and we waited about a minute or two later. Cop comes in and he's like, "Hey, we got the guy down just a few blocks away. We need you to identify him." So we get into a squad car and they bring us just down like 3 blocks away, 3 or 4 blocks away. And that's when we see the guy in custody looks bang dead on. That's the guy. We could see from his hair that it was the same guy.
And obviously you could identify him because of the clothes he was wearing too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was just pretty much, that was the guy. So we identified him. So they caught him. They caught her. They found out he had a tattoo of her name on his body. So it's pretty dead set. They were pretty much connected.
So they got this guy within like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I talked to the cop when they brought us down to talk to us. He was like, "This is the craziest case in 18 years he had ever seen. This, it doesn't happen like this." He said it almost never happens exactly like it went down.
What occurs to me is that if this guy was a little bit smarter, like if he took your phones so you couldn't call, and if he had tied you up properly, I mean, he's ripping up bed sheets. He could have brought zip ties with him, and you guys would have been there for quite a while trying to get out of that because they're almost impossible. But they only got him quickly because you were able to get loose and call 911 right away.
Yeah, even if he'd just taken our wallets as we're about to enter the apartment, if he just wanted cash, there would have been just so much easier ways to do it. None of the plan he had in place seemed to make sense to me. It seemed like what he did was designed for maximum terror for minimum payoff. Even the best case scenario, because he didn't even take our things. Like I had a laptop that was still in my very expensive laptop. I think when they found him, he had a backpack full of stolen jewelry or things like that. And he had my buddy's Switch on him. I guess the Switch and my money were the only things that he even took. So I'm not really sure why exactly his plan was the way it was. It seemed like even in the best circumstances, he made out with a few $100 in a Nintendo Switch in a home invasion. We came back home. We stayed with a cop for a little bit while they were dealing with stuff with him. Eventually, we had to go back down to the station because we had to give our statements. We're there for a couple hours. They show us the revolver he threw when they were chasing him. It was like the exact gun pointed at us. They showed us all 5 bullets loaded into that gun. So it was a fully loaded gun. So if anything would have went wrong, that would have been all she wrote for me. So I'm glad it played out the way it did. I got very, very lucky. At some point in time, it was a very long night. And it turns out when you're a victim, you have to stay for 10, 12 hours at the station here. So at one point in time, detectives bring us in their car and then bring us back to the crime scene. And we're like, okay, let's see what happened. They were like, yeah, we saw that the third window was open in Ben's, my third roommate. So when you walk in, it's my bedroom, Jack's bedroom, and then his bedroom. They had saw that the window was open. So the guy had gotten through that window. I think he just pushed up the window and just broke the lock. There's just these cheap plastic locks. And that's how we got through. We're like, okay, so we want to go check that out. We're going to go check the crime scene. All the bindings that we had cut, they would have had fingerprints on them. So they're like, okay, we have the whole crime scene ready to go. We get there. We're outside. We're walking outside. We're like, okay, here's the window. It's closed for some reason. And then we just see my third roommate, Ben, playing on his laptop, just nonchalantly, like nothing had happened. He was just playing video games. And we were like, what? The window's closed. And so that's immediately, this crime scene is now tampered with. At least that part was.
Because Ben had no idea anything had happened?
We had told him, no. We texted him immediately afterwards, like, hey, what happened? When you get there, I guess there wasn't any cop or anything inside waiting to tell him, hey, don't touch anything. This is an active crime scene. But no, he just waltzed in. You remember that video of the guy is on the call and then the babies come in and he's scrambling to shut the door or whatever on him. That's it felt like those babies had come through and just started doing their own thing.
How much did he mess up the crime scene and the evidence?
well, the window's closed at least, but when we walk in, at least there's still all the bindings like that. No, everything in the living room had been cleaned up. So all the bindings, all the evidence, get bagged up and thrown away. Just because he was like, oh, it's messy in here. So let's clean this up. He's like being again, I don't want to disparage him. I think nobody tells you what to think or what to do when there's a crime scene. You don't think, I think he was a little stunned. I think he was also very, very stunned too, and just didn't know what to do. So he's like, okay, I can at least clean this up and get everything back to normal.
You know, it's funny. You hear about people that live with roommates about how sloppy and messy their roommates are. Ben just wanted to tidy things up a little bit, but it's kind of inconvenient in this case.
You know, I don't blame him at all. He just didn't realize. I mean, you just never think you're going to be, your own apartment becomes an active crime scene. So I think he just wasn't thinking about all that stuff. But unfortunately, he had tainted all of that. Luckily, the middle bedroom was still like he had not gone in or touched at all. So it still had evidence and stuff like that in there. It didn't like completely blow everything. It was just extra evidence that like had been tampered with, unfortunately.
All right, let's talk for a minute about who this guy is, the gunman. His name is Kabar Venson, and he's 30 years old. Or what did you eventually find out about him?
I eventually found out that he had been arrested for doing a home invasion in like just a few blocks away from where my apartment is, just like 7 years ago. I think he was arrested. He was prosecuted 15 years for home invasion and witness tampering, which is also like kind of scares me. And then he only served 7 years of that sentence. And then he was out for 10 days on parole before he was in our home. So he'd only been out and free for 10 days on parole. So they had deemed him rehabilitated. They were like, yeah, this guy's got to go back in society. And then he was in my home with a gun to my head.
It almost seems like he wanted to get caught again. Has that occurred to you? Do you think that's a possibility?
I definitely think it could be, because it was just kind of sloppy. I think he probably didn't care if he went back. I think I heard from the cops, they said like when he got caught, the first things he said were, tell my mom I'm going back to jail. So I guess he was ready to go back. There's definitely a strong possibility that he just wanted to go back. Although I think he still was surprised that he got caught. I think he was just more, I mean, everything just seemed rushed and like, for some reason, he really needed this petty cash. So I think the whole thing was just like ill thought out and ill conceived at the time.
And he's obviously not very good at this at all. He doesn't plan ahead. I mean, that's to your benefit, of course.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully I don't run into a home invader who knows what he's doing.
When he got caught this time after your home invasion, he pled not guilty in this case, right? So it's going to trial?
They told us it's not really like our part was done, so nobody's actually informed me of what's going on, and I need to go down and get the police report number to figure it out. But no, I had no idea. They told me that there's a pretty good chance he was just going to plea out, so I had no idea he was actually going to trial.
And I don't know that either, but it seems like if it does go to trial, you would probably be called, you and Jack would be called as witnesses. I mean, you were right there witnessing what he was doing.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
You left the station and came back home, or did you go back home? Did you feel safe going back to that place?
Well, unfortunately, we didn't get out of the station till like 5 a.m. So I looked into getting hotels, but there was just like nothing available by the time we were done. So I had to come back, and I just kind of passed out on my bed in the same home. So no, I didn't feel safe, but unfortunately ironically enough, my hands were tied.
Did you get your cash back that day?
Yes. I got my cash back in one of my debit cards. He pitched the rest of my wallet away, but he had one of my debit cards on him. So I didn't have a wallet. I just had that cash and that debit card. So I was also kind of hampered by that as well. So I also had to go get a new wallet and ID and things like that.
Yeah, that's such a hassle having to replace all that stuff. It's bad enough when you lose it and you don't even know where it is. But when somebody steals it and then they throw it away, I guess that's a minor inconvenience compared to how it could have turned out.
Yeah, like I said, was more than willing to give him any cash he wanted or anything like that. I was just, as long as that gun didn't go off, I was fine, whatever material stuff he wanted. So I wasn't super worried about that, but it was very annoying.
How would you describe how this affected you mentally right after it happened?
Well, I didn't really go back to my apartment for a while. I stayed in a bunch of hotels and friends' places. I might have stayed at my place maybe once in after the first few weeks, like once or twice by necessity, but I was pretty paranoid and I wound up spending some time with family. Like I just left town and I just recently got back. Yeah, it's got me paranoid and I haven't really left the house much since then. It's just because I'm oh my gosh, now I see crime everywhere. I'm it could happen at any point in time. So I'm much more, I don't want to say paranoid, but I'm very much more vigilant now than I used to be, for sure.
When you say you haven't left the house, are you back at your place or are you living somewhere else?
Yes, I'm back. Unfortunately, money-wise, I had to come back here to make money again because I was just completely out. So unfortunately, I'm back here, even because it was up to me, I'd still be back with my family. But yeah, I'm back here by necessity, unfortunately.
As we record this just happened in May of 2024. So that was just a few months ago. Have you gotten therapy or what kind of help have you gotten to process this?
I see a regular therapist. I'm in the process of doing some more intense therapy, probably where I have to go to a facility 4 or 5 times a week. So we're talking about doing some very intense therapy focused on PTSD, essentially. So I'm still in the process of getting on much more extreme forms of therapy, but for sure I'm going to be probably dealing with this for a little while.
And were you diagnosed with PTSD?
Yeah. I actually had to get off work for a little bit because of that diagnosis.
I hope you continue to make progress, and thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, you want to see a really crazy picture? Chris took a picture of his roommate, Jack, while Jack was still hogtied on the floor. You can check that out in the episode notes at whatwasthatlike.com/194. Have you ever had a really amazing coincidence happen to you? Apparently a lot of people have. That's the question I asked this past Tuesday in the Facebook group, and I had my own answer, which I posted there too. We'd love to hear what your story is about an unbelievable coincidence. Come on over and join the discussion at whatwasthatlike.com/Facebook. Graphics for this episode were created by Bob Bretz. Full episode transcription was created by James Lai. And here we are again, like the end of every episode, about to hear this week's listener story. Any listener, including you, can just record a 5 to 10 minute personal story and send it in. You can record it right on your phone and email it to me, scott@whatwasthatlike.com. This week's story is about something that happened at work that was kind of a mystery. Then it got really creepy. Stay safe, and I'll see you here next time.
This was several years ago, and I was working for the company for the second time. And this time they had implemented a new employee directory, which required everybody to have their photo taken. In the directory, it had your photo, your name, and the coordinates to where your desk was on whatever floor. It was a decent-sized building, 3 or 4 floors, including the basement level, lower level. And it housed the IT department for the entire company. They took up half of a level on one of the floors. We had been working on one floor in this quadrant, and I started to notice some stains on my chair. And I have OCD and anxiety, and germs were a huge trigger for me. I always was very clean and meticulously cleaned my desk, and everything was in order. And to see a large stain on my chair was disturbing. To me, it looked like maybe the cleaning crew had set a sack of collected cans on my chair and maybe it had leaked. It was a dark substance. Everybody had red chairs, so you could see the dark outline. At this point, it was pretty dry, but I was still freaked out, so I laid a barrier down for a few days until I knew for sure it was dry and whatever was maybe on there had kind of soaked into the papers that I'd put down. Fast forward a few months later, and it happens again, Monday morning, and there is this dark spot on my chair. So I tell my boss, and I said, I really think like they're just setting a sack of cans or something on my chair, and it's leaking. This is disgusting. I'm losing my mind. Please contact that department and let them know to stop doing that. So they got me a different chair. They swapped it out with another chair. Now we have moved our department to a different floor and to a different quadrant, and we're in a little cube farm. And right after we move there, I have a dark spot on my chair. Okay, well now this feels pretty targeted. So this is now 4 times maybe. It's not really happening to anybody else around me, just my chair. So my boss, well, let's find another chair, swap it out. She's like, I've talked to the department. They've said that they've talked to their people and they're saying that they haven't done that. They don't think it's them. And I'm like, it has to be them. Who else is here on the weekends or at night? So every month this happens. And there's times where I'm coming in on the weekend with my daughter. I have to do just a little bit of work. I come in, do some work, leave, and then Monday morning, it's on my chair again. At this point, it doesn't have a smell. I'm leaning down. It doesn't have a smell. I touch it, and it has just a very, very mild, like oily kind of residue. My coworker, he picks up the chair, puts it right to his face, smells it, and he's like, there's no smell. I'm like, right? I don't smell anything either. So, laying barriers down until they can get me a new chair. Finally, they started to just clean my chair. So they're like, okay, anytime it happens, let us know right away. We'll take your chair, we'll steam clean it, we'll sanitize it, and you're just gonna have to sit on your plastic chair for a couple days and then we'll give it back. I was good with that, but still freaked out because I'm so afraid of germs. So I'm cleaning my desk every single day, and it started to happen to a couple people around me. Women. It never happened to the one guy who was in our cube zone. And then we start to hear about other women in other areas of the building who have this weird stuff on their chair. And it comes up in a meeting. It's so random. We're talking about it and they're like, wait, we have this happening to our chair too. So it happens again. And I finally tell my boss, this is only happening to women. Something is happening. So her boss happens to overhear this. They go have a meeting. And then within a week or two, they are doing some maintenance to the smoke alarms in the ceiling, kind of above my desk. At this point, I'm starting to have weird things being left on my desk. The most notable that I remember was a hand-drawn picture that was pinned to my corkboard. It wasn't there. Nobody I knew did it. I didn't know really anybody else in the building because it was such a large building, and nobody did it. And it freaked me out. I have these things happening to my chair every month. Now I'm getting weird things left on my desk, weird drawn photos, pictures pinned to my cube, and I'm panicking. So they're constantly cleaning the chairs. And then I come in one morning and it's there. And at this point, I'm so angry. I tell my boss, this is unacceptable. What is happening? And she says, I don't know. And then they go have a meeting with their boss. And within a couple hours, the police are there. there are detectives there, lawyers are there, HR is there, and they tell us that they had actually installed hidden cameras above my desk and in other areas, and they caught an IT person who had been with the company for 20 plus years going and urinating and potentially pleasuring himself on these chairs. And when they talked to him, he said that he had to work 1 weekend a month, and he would go to the directory, find the women he thought were most attractive, and he would do this to their desk. And they did say the urination was a sexually motivated thing for him. So lawyers are coming in, they're making us sign things saying we're not going to sue the company because it only happened to women. I'd been complaining about it for 8 or 9 months. And they finally, it was once I said out loud, this is only happening to women, that they finally did something. So he's terminated. He's given a severance and allowed to keep his retirement, his pension, which is bizarre. He's charged with a Class D felony, and his charges had nothing to do with the personal targeting it or the sexual aspect. It was monetary damage to the chairs only, which felt really gross because it was more than just the chair damage. Ultimately, they gave us counseling and they gave us a victim's advocate because this was going through the courts. In the process, they talked to all of the victims and said, would you like to make a victim impact statement? I said, yes, please, let me do that. And out of the whole group, so many people, it was so disturbing that they just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I thought, I'm not going to let this guy only get away with just the monetary damage because there was so much more damage done. It was so violating. It was so disgusting. Just to have somebody urinating on your stuff, possibly sexually pleasuring themselves on your stuff, but it was targeted. It was so gross. So in that whole thing, they also allowed the victims to confront the person who did this. And I asked everybody else who this happened to. There's maybe like 5 women, 6 maybe. And they said, no, we're not. I'm done with it. I don't want to think about it. It's so gross. I'm over it. And I was so disturbed. He had flipped my world upside down because of my OCD and my germophobia and my anxiety. And it really, really affected me. And I just did not want to let him get away without knowing what he did. And I had so many questions too. So I said, yes, I want to confront this guy. A few months later, we go to this small room at a different location. I have the victim's advocate. There's lawyers there, social workers there. And he comes in and I said, why did you do this? And he said, I just don't know. Then he backpedals and says, it was not sexually motivated. It was not targeted, even though he had followed me around the building where we had moved. And I said, listen, I had food in my desk. Did you do that? He said, no. And I said, I had chapstick at my desk. I'm afraid to put chapstick on my lips for fear that you have put this in places that are dangerous for me. And he said, no. And I said, I had photos of my child out at my desk. That is terrifying. I came in there over the weekend. The building's empty, mostly for the weekend. I said, I came in there with my child over the weekend. Like, that is terrifying. This should be a safe place for me. And I confronted him and told him everything I thought about what he did and the impact that it had on me. And he was crying. I was crying. And that was sort of it. I didn't believe a lot of the things he said, but I did not want to let him walk away with only a monetary charge. He needed to know what he did and how it impacted real humans. And I was the only person who did that. Unfortunately, it made national news. It was on all the late night talk shows. They made jokes about it. It was in all the papers across the country. And the comment section was awful. Of course, we, the people who he targeted, were responsible. You know, how are they dumb enough that they didn't know? How, you know, just every horrible thing you can think of, these people said. Even coworkers, when I was talking about it, I mean, it is so jarring. And the response I got, even from women, was, oh, boo-hoo, I'm so pretty. Somebody targeted me because I'm so pretty. Oh, must be rough. Oh my gosh. So ultimately, I changed desks. This person was banned, never allowed in or near the building. There was a restraining order. All of that has died down, but it has stuck with me forever. I no longer leave photos of my family. I no longer leave food or any personal items at my desk. And I clean still. I'm better with my OCD and my anxiety through lots of therapy, but it was a very jarring experience. And I hope nobody ever has to go through that. I also never allow my photo to be put on a company directory ever again.